Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another session of Story Time with your sister Shaya Fire. Today we are talking about the Ogun iron ore as Erzalie, the liar, Dan the tear, cutting the etheric cords of Satan and the mother spirit of the LGBTQ plus. So, Erzalie Dantor or Erzalie Dantor is the main Loa or Lewa, LWA or LLA, or the senior spirit of the Petro family in Haitian voodoo. Petro as in petroleum. Um, is Erzalie Danto or Erzalie Danto is the manifestation of Erzalie, the divinity of love. It is said that Erzalie Danto has a dark complexion and is maternal in nature. The Erzalie are feminine spirits in Haitian voodoo that personify womanhood. The Erzalie is a goddess spirit or Loa of love in Haitian voodoo. She has several manifestations or incarnations, but most prominent and well-known manifestations are Lazarin, the mermaid, Erzalie Frida, and Erzalie Dantor. There are spelling variations of Erzalie, the other being Ezili. They are English interpretations of a Creole word, but do not differ in meaning. Tuesdays are the days reserved to worship Erzalie Dantor. Worship is normally done in solitary in front of an altar identified by the colors blue, black, and red. The most recurrent sacrifices consist of cream de cacao, jewels, golden rings, and agua de Florida. For her birthday, a wild pig is normally the main sacrifice. In Haitian mythology, there are multiple spiritual entities or loi that work between the mortal world and the divine world. Erzalie are feminine spirits that personify different aspects of womanhood. Erzalie Frida is a Rada Loa who represents romantic love and erotic sexuality, while Erzalie Dantor is Petro and represents the hardworking and sometimes angry mother, although she is also known to take on lovers of her own. Erzalie Dantor is believed to have children of her own in some stories, such as Tai Jean Petro, and is a fervent protector of the youth and the marginalized. Erzalie Frida is Dantor's rival and is said to be responsible for leaving scars on Dantor's cheek, known as Tawamak, during a fight over the love of Ogun, according to some legends. Another distinction between them is that Frida is light-skinned and relatively wealthy, indicative of her status as an upper-class woman. Thus, Erzalie Dantor strongly resonates with lower-class women in Haitian society. Other stories in the religion note that Erzalie Danto is non-speaking as a result of her tongue being cut out by other Haitian revolutionaries who feared she would betray them. Erzalie Danto only utters syllables during possession because of this, and is capable of becoming extremely angry and vengeful to the point that she is considered evil, though she is not inherently so. Dantor's anger has the power to destroy, and her vehement displeasure has earned her the reputation of being the red-eyed Erzalie Jarouge. Her destructive powers often come in the form of natural disasters and the forces of nature. Her rage is even said to be able to afflict those who anger her with extremely painful illnesses. 555. In Zora Neale Hurston's Haiti and Their Eyes Were Watching God, Erzalie Danto's rage is described as violent reminder to the folk that their passive faith in Euro-Americans or Christianity to determine their fate is misguided. Ultimately, Erzalie Dantor rages and destroys, but also suffers, known to be associated with fertility problems women experience, including aphasia. However, at heart, Erzalie Dantor is a devoted and selfless mother, willing to do all that is possible to protect those she loves and cares for, even turn the world upside down. Those who venerate Dantor are expected to serve her with the same undying loyalty in return, as well as caution. Erzalie Dantor and the Haitian Revolution. It is accounted that the slave revolt of 1791 started with a pact which followed a big feast in honor to Erzalie Dantor. For this reason, she is considered the national Lua, considered to be a fearless warrior in the Petro Nation, Petwo Nanshan in Haitian Creole. Dantor has been popular among single mothers during the 1980s and 1990s in Haiti and Dominican Republic. Syncretic modern representations of Dantor sometimes associate her with the Mater Salvatoris, especially those depicted with children, Our Lady of Lourdes and Our Lady of Mount Carmel as examples. The most common association, however, is the Black Madonna of Zestochowa, the patron saint of Poland. The original association of Erzalie Dantor with the Black Madonna of Zestochowa is hypothesized to be from copies of the icon brought to Haiti by Polish soldiers sent by order of Napoleon Bonaparte to subdue the then still ongoing Haitian Revolution. It is accounted that the Polish Legion saw the struggle of the Polish nation during the partitions of Poland in the struggle of the Haitian slaves and fight for their freedom, and as a result, the Polish soldiers eventually turned on the French army to join the Haitian slaves. As a consequence of this action, during Jean-Jacques Dessalines' 1804 massacre, which took place shortly after the Haitian victory, the Poles were left alive and granted citizenship of the newly founded Republic of Haiti. Here we go, this is the mixing. The descendants of these soldiers are still living in the island, specifically in the locality of Cazal. References in popular culture. Books. The 2013 novel Zora Neale Hurston, Haiti and Their Eyes Were Watching God, is a collection of 10 essays from various authors that break down and analyze the literary work of Zora Neale Hurston and her 1937 novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God. Hurston's stories follow a light-skinned woman by the name of Janie Crawford. Hurston writes the character of Janie with characteristics that resemble Erzalie Frida, but that both Frida and Danto live within her. Janie falls in love with and marries a dark-skinned man named Tea Cake, but must show him that she is not above working in the fields like other working class folk. By working in the fields, Janie shows that she is not afraid of hard work, is mature, and embraces Erzalie Danto. In the Mambo Reina series by Veronica G. Henry, the main character is a Mamba who is dedicated to Erzalie. Paul Buburn performed a song dedicated to Erzalie on his album Ayabobo. Erzalie from the album Potamatan is a song written by Celine Saint Amy, a French Caribbean contrabass player, vocalist, and poet. Is the mother spirit of the LGBTQ. Two spirits It may now be included in the umbrella of LGBTQ. The term two-spirit does not simply mean someone who is a Native American slash Alaska Native and gay. Traditionally, Native American two-spirit people were male, female, and sometimes intersexed individuals who combined activities of both men and women with traits unique to their status as two-spirit people. In most tribes, they were considered neither men nor women. They occupied a distinct alternative gender status. In tribes where two-spirit males and females were referred to with the same term, this status amounted to a third gender. In other cases, two-spirit females were referred to with a distinct term and therefore constituted a fourth gender. Although there were important variations in two-spirit roles across North America, they shared some common traits. Two-spirit people typically formed sexual and emotional relationships with non-two-spirit members of their own sex, forming both short and long-term relationships. Among the Lakota, Mojave, Crow, Cheyenne, and others, two-spirit people were believed to be lucky in love and able to bestow this luck on others. Today, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Native people throughout North America are reviving the two-spirit role and its traditions. National gatherings of two-spirit people have been held since the early 1990s, and regional gatherings are held in many parts of the country. Barbara Gittings, mother of the LGBT civil rights movement. This month, PPI celebrates Pride. Pride is about people embracing who they are and coming together to show how far gay rights have come. Although awareness and support for the community continue to grow, members still face discrimination and mental health struggles. During June, we want to educate and encourage you to learn more about how you can be a better ally to the LGBTQ community and support this celebration of acceptance and the devil. Second to be highlighted is Barbara Gittings, a gay rights activist and widely regarded as the mother of the LGBT civil rights movement. Gittings was born in Vienna, Austria in 1932. In 1958, while commuting from Philadelphia, she started the New York chapter of the Daughters of Bilitis, sounds like Iblis, or DOB, date of birth. No. This was the nation's first lesbian civil rights organization in the United States. Gittings enlisted activists from New York, Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia for the first public demonstrations for gay and lesbian equality. From 1965 to 1969 in front of Independence Hall every July 4th. Protests known as annual reminders paved the way for the Stonewall riot in 1969. Miss Rachel. In 1970, a march commemorated the first anniversary of the Stonewall from Greenwich Village to Central Park, Miss Green Hut. It was remembered as the first New York City Pride Parade. Gittings edited the latter, a lesbian periodical published by the DOB. In the 1964 issue, her editorial blasted a medical report that described homosexuality as a disease that treated lesbians more like curious specimens than as humans. She went on to stop the American Psychiatric Association from classifying homosexuality as a mental disorder. Barbara Gittings, in 1973, the APA announced its removal of the classification of homosexuality as a mental disorder. With their retraction, the gay rights movement was no longer burdened by the label and its consequences. From then on, she promoted gay literature and eliminated gay discrimination in the nation's libraries. She worked closely with the Gay Task Force of the American Library Association and edited their bibliography about gay men and lesbians. In 2001, the Free Library of Philadelphia named the Giddings Collection of Gay and Lesbian Materials at its Independence branch. In 2012, Philadelphia City Council approved a designated block in the heart of the city's gayborhood, Barbara Giddings Way, BGW. Barbara died of breast cancer at age 74. Her numerous awards and recognition carried on her legacy of monumental changes in the gay rights movement. I have 606 and 68 on the percentage. That's 6668. Okay. I took a picture the other day on a walk. Let me pull it up. It said Gayborhood, Gaybor, a gay pig neighborhood. I don't know. I don't know. I hope it's on this phone. Let's see. Yeah, it says Gaiety Theater, Gayety on 92nd and Commercial. Last times today, that uncertain feeling, outlaws of the panhandle, the iron claw. A two-fisted hero fights for peace. Gene Autry, America's #1 cowboy. Sunset in Wyoming. Ice cream parlor in memory of James Papa George. Georgie. And Lee Flesser. Gaiety Theater, 1908 to 1982. 9205 Commercial. Okay. So let us talk about what it means to be intersex. Okay. What's intersex? Intersex is an umbrella term that describes bodies that fall outside the strict male/female binary. There are lots of ways someone can be intersex. Intersex is a general term used for a variety of situations in which a person is born with reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't fit the boxes of female or male. Sometimes doctors do surgeries on intersex babies and children to make their bodies fit binary ideas of male or female. Doctors always assign intersex babies a legal sex, male or female, in most states. But just like with non-intersex people, that what is saying? With non-intersex people, that doesn't mean that's the gender identity they'll grow up to have. This brings up questions about whether or not it's okay to do medical procedures on children's bodies when it's not needed for their health. Being intersex is a naturally occurring variation in humans, and it isn't a medical problem. Therefore, medical interventions like surgeries or hormone therapy on children usually aren't medically necessary. Being intersex is also more common than most people realize. It's hard to know exactly how many people are intersex, but estimates suggest that about 1 to 2 in 100 people born in the US are intersex. Ooh, 1 second. There are many different ways someone can be intersex. Some intersex people have genitals or internal sex organs that fall outside the male female categories, such as a person with both ovarian and testicular tissues. Other intersex people have combinations of chromosomes that are different than XY, usually associated with male, and XX, usually associated with female, like XXY. And some people are born with external genitals that fall into the typical male female categories, but their internal organs or hormones don't. If a person's genitals look different from what doctors and nurses expect when they're born, someone might be identified as intersex from birth. Other times, someone might not know they're intersex until later in life, like when they go through puberty. Sometimes a person can live their whole life without ever discovering that they're intersex. What happens when someone is born intersex? Most of the time, when a baby is born intersex, doctors and the family decide on a sex, either male or female, and raise the baby as the gender expected of that sex. It's pretty common for surgery to be done on the baby's genitals and also for the child to be given hormones to make them fit into the male or female categories as they go through puberty. But activism by and for intersex people is growing, leading to some changes in our culture, which right now treats intersex as a medical problem instead of natural, healthy way bodies can be. Today, more and more people believe unnecessary surgery and other medical interventions shouldn't be done on intersex babies and children at all. Instead, intersex people should be able to decide for themselves when they're older if they want treatment or surgery. Mm. Ugh. 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 Oh, sorry. Intersex people are individuals born with any several underlying genetic conditions that cause abnormal development of sex characteristics, including chromosome patterns, gonads, or genitals that, according to the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, do not fit typical binary notions of male or female bodies. Sex assignment at birth usually aligns with a child's external genitalia. The number of births with ambiguous genitals is in the range of 1 to 4,500 to 1 to 2,000, or 0.02% to 0.05%. Other conditions involve the development of atypical chromosomes, gonads, or hormones. Some persons may be assigned and raised as a girl or boy, but then identify with another gender later in life, while most continue to identify with their assigned sex. The number of births where the baby is intersex has been reported differently depending on who reports and which definition of intersex is used. Anne Fausto Sterling and her book co-authors claim the prevalence of non-dimorphic sexual development might be as high as 1.7%. However, a response published by Leonard Sachs reports this figure includes conditions such as late onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia and Klinefelter syndrome. Which most clinicians do not recognize as intersex. Sachs states, if the term intersex is to retain any meaning, the term should be restricted to those conditions in which chromosomal sex is inconsistent with phenotypic sex, or in which the phenotype is not classifiable as either male or female, stating the prevalence of intersex is about 0.018%, 1 in 5,500 births, about 100 times less than Fausto Sterling's estimate. Terms used to describe intersex people are contested and change over time and place. Intersex people were previously referred to as hermaphrodites or congenital eunuchs. In the 19th and 20th centuries, some medical experts devised new nomenclature in an attempt to classify the characteristics that they had observed. The first attempt to create a taxonomic classification system of intersex conditions. Intersex people were categorized as either having true hermaphroditism, female pseudo-hermaphroditism, or male pseudo-hermaphroditism. These terms are no longer used, and terms including the word hermaphrodite are considered to be misleading, stigmatizing, and scientifically specious in reference to humans. In biology, the term hermaphrodite is used to describe an organism that can produce both male and female gametes. Some people with intersex traits use the term intersex, and some prefer other language. In clinical settings, the term disorders of sex development, or DSD, has been used since 2006, a shift in language considered controversial since its introduction. Intersex people face stigmatization and discrimination from birth or following the discovery of intersex traits at stages of development such as puberty. Intersex people may face infanticide, abandonment, and stigmatization from their families. Globally, some intersex infants and children, such as those with ambiguous outer genitalia, are surgically or hormonally altered to create more socially acceptable sex characteristics. This is considered controversial, with no firm evidence of favorable outcomes. Such treatments may involve sterilization. Adults, including elite female athletes, have also been subjects of such treatment. Increasingly, these issues are considered human rights abuses, with statements from international and national human rights and ethics institutions. Intersex organizations have also issued statements about human rights violations, including the 2013 Malta Declaration of the Third International Intersex Forum. In 2011, Christian Balling became the first intersex person known to have successfully sued for damages in a case brought for non-consensual surgical intervention. In April 2015, Malta became the first country to outlaw non-consensual medical interventions to modify sex anatomy, including that of intersex people. Terminology. There is no clear consensus definition of intersex and no clear delineation of which specific conditions qualify an individual as intersex. The World Health Organization's International Classification of Diseases, or the ICD, the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM, and many medical journals classify intersex traits or conditions among disorders of sex development, or DSD. A common adjective for people with disorders of sex development, DSD, is intersex. Etymology and definitions. In 1917, Richard Goldschmidt created the term intersexuality to refer to a variety of physical sex ambiguities. However, according to the Sage Encyclopedia of LGBTQ Studies, it was not until Anne Fausto Sterling published her article, The Five Sexes, Why Male and Female Are Not Enough, in 1993, that the term reached popularity. According to the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, intersex people are born with sex characteristics, including genitals, gonads, and chromosome patterns that do not fit typical binary notions of male or female bodies. Intersex is an umbrella term used to describe a wide range of natural bodily variations. Attitudes towards the term. Some intersex organizations reference intersex people and intersex variations or traits, while others use more medicalized language, such as people with intersex conditions, or people with intersex conditions, or DSDs, differences of sex development, and children born with variations of sex anatomy. In May 2016, Interact published a statement recognizing increasing general understanding and acceptance of the term intersex. Australian sociological research on 272 people born with atypical sex characteristics, published in 2016, found that 60% of respondents used the term intersex to self-describe their sex characteristics, including people identifying themselves as intersex, describing themselves as having an intersex variation, or in smaller numbers, having an intersex condition. Respondents also commonly used diagnostic labels and referred to their sex chromosomes with word choices depending on audience. Research on 202 respondents by the Lurie Children's Hospital, Chicago, and the AIS-DSD support group, now known as Interconnect Support Group, published in 2017, found that 80% of support group respondents strongly liked or felt neutral about intersex as a term, while caregivers were less supportive. The hospital reported that the use of the term disorders of sex development may negatively affect care. Another study by a group of children's hospitals in the United States found that 53% of 133 parent and adolescent participants recruited at 5 clinics did not like the term intersex. Participants who were members of support groups were more likely to dislike the term. A DSD Life study in 2020 found that around 43% of 179 participants thought the term intersex was bad. 20% felt neutral about the term, while 37% thought the term was good. The term hermaphrodite. Historically, the term hermaphrodite was used in law to refer to people whose sex was in doubt. The 12th century Decretum Gratiani states that whether an hermaphrodite may witness a testament depends on which sex prevails. Hermaphroditus and ad testamentum adhibere possit qualitas sexes in calicentis ostendit. Similarly, the 17th century English jurist and judge Edward Coke, Lord Coke, wrote in his Institutes of the Laws of England on laws of succession, stating, every heir is either a male, a female, or hermaphrodite, that is both male and female. And an hermaphrodite, which is also called androgynous, shall be heir either as male or female, according to that kind of sex which doth prevail. During the Victorian era, medical authors attempted to ascertain whether or not humans could be hermaphrodites, adopting a precise biological definition for the term and making distinctions between male pseudo-hermaphrodite, female pseudo-hermaphrodite, and especially true hermaphrodite. These terms, which reflected histology, microscopic appearance of the gonads, are no longer used. Until the mid-20th century, hermaphrodite was used synonymously with intersex. Medical terminology shifted in the early 21st century, not only due to concerns about language, but also a shift to understandings based on genetics. The term hermaphrodite is also controversial, as it implies the existence of someone fully male and fully female. This is a fantasy by certain people who seek hermaphrodite sex partners. In the intersex movement, such people are called wannafucks. What? Dead. I'm alive. I'm dead. I'm asleep. Dead. As such, the term hermaphrodite is often seen as degrading and offensive, although many intersex activists use it as a direct form of self-empowerment and critique, such as in the ISNA first newsletter, Hermaphrodites with Attitude. The Intersex Society of North America has stated that hermaphrodites should not be confused with intersex people, and that using hermaphrodite to refer to intersex individuals is considered to be stigmatizing and misleading. The prevalence. Estimates of the number of people who are intersex vary depending on which conditions are counted as intersex. The now defunct Intersex Society of North America stated that if you ask experts at medical centers how often a child is born so noticeably atypical in terms of genitalia, that a specialist in sex differentiation is called in. The number comes out to about 1 in 1,500 to 1 in 2,000 births, or 0.07 to 0.05%. But a lot more people than that are born with subtler forms of sex anatomy variations, some of which won't show up until later in life. Anne Fausto Sterling and her co-authors stated in 2000 that adding the estimates of all known causes of non-dimorphic sexual development suggests that approximately 1.7% of all live births do not conform to a platonic ideal of absolute sex chromosome, gonadal, genital, and hormonal dimorphism. These publications have been widely quoted by intersex activists. Of the 1.7%, 1.5% points, 88% of those considered non-dimorphic sexual development in this figure consist of individuals with late onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or LOCA, LOCAH, which may be as asymptomatic but can present after puberty and cause infertility. Ella? Leonard Sachs, in response to Fausto Sterling's, estimated that the prevalence of intersex was about 0.018% of the world's population, discounting several conditions included in Fausto Sterling's estimate that included LOCA, Klinefelter syndrome, 47XXY. Of 47XYY and 47XXX, and vaginal agenesis. Sachs reasons that in these conditions, chromosomal sex is consistent with phenotypic sex, and phenotype is classifiable as either male or female. In a 2003 letter to the editor, political scientist Carrie Hull analyzed the data used by Fausto Sterling and said the estimated intersex rate should instead have been 0.37% due to many errors. In a response later published simultaneously, Fausto Sterling welcomed the additional analysis and said, "I am not invested in a particular final estimate, only that there be an estimate." A 2018 review reported that the number of births with ambiguous genitals is in the range of 0.02% to 0.05%. Intersex Human Rights Australia says it maintains 1.7, put on my do not disturb, 1.7% as its preferred upper limit despite its flaws, stating both that the estimate encapsulates the entire population of people who are stigmatized or risk stigmatization due to innate sex characteristics, and that Sachs's definitions exclude individuals who experience such stigma and who have helped to establish the intersex movement. According to Interact, a major organization for intersex rights in the U.S., states that 1.7% of people have some variation of sexual development, 0.5% have atypical genitalia, and 0.05% have mixed or ambiguous genitalia. A study relying on a nationally representative study conducted in Mexico between 2021 and 2022 obtained similar estimates. Around 1.6% of individuals aged 15 to 64 reported being born with sex variations. The following summarizes prevalences of traits that medical experts consider to be intersex. late onset genital adrenal hyperplasia, non-classical forms, sex specificity, female, males are generally asymptomatic, hypospadias, male 1 in 200 to 10,000 male births. Prevalence estimates vary. Decline Felter syndrome, male, trisomy X female, Turner syndrome, female, Mullerian agenesis of vagina, i.e., MRKH or Merck syndrome, female, vaginal atresia, female, 45X, 46XY mosaicism, none, usually male, 1 in 6,666 births. XYY syndrome, male, 1 in 7,000 male births. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia, classical forms, none but virilization of female infants. XXXY syndrome, male, XXXXY syndrome, male, XXYY syndrome, male, XXXYY syndrome, De La Chappelle syndrome, Dave Chappelle syndrome, what? Ovotesticular syndrome, XY gonadal dysgenesis, androgen insensitivity syndrome, complete and partial phenotypes, androgen deficiency, idiopathic, no discernible medical cause, iatrogenic, caused by medical treatment, progestogen administered to pregnant mother, 5-alpha reductase deficiency, aromatase excess syndrome, aromatase deficiency syndrome, Norkia, persistent Mullerian duct syndrome, 46XX, 46XY, Leydig cell hypoplasia, gonadotropin releasing hormone insensitivity, familial male limited precocious puberty, cytochrome P450, exodoreductase deficiency, isolated 1720 lace deficiency, testicular dysgenesis syndrome, pinoscrotal transposition, Calvin syndrome, hyperandrogenism, hyperestrogenism, polyorchidism, aphalia, cryptorchidism, and cloacal extrophy, born with XY chromosomes in a male. Woo, good Lord. So categorization of late onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia as an intersex condition is disputed by some experts, explained in the prevalence section. In the Dominican Republic, 5-alpha reductase deficiency is not uncommon in the town of Las Salinas, resulting in social acceptance of the intersex trait. Men with the trait are called huevdoses, Spanish for eggs at 12. 12 out of 13 families had one or more male family members that carried the gene. The overall incidence for the town was 1 in every 90 males were carriers, with other males either non-carriers or non-affected carriers. Oh, Lord. Oh, my stomach hurt. Blech. From early history, societies have been aware of intersex people. Some of the earliest evidence is found in mythology. The Greek historian Diodorus Siculus wrote of the mythological Hermaphroditus in the 1st century BC, who was born with a physical body which is a combination of that of a man and that of a woman, and reputedly possessed supernatural properties. He also recounted the lives of Diophantus of Abai or Abea, and Calon of Epidaurus. Ardhanarishvara, an androgynous composite form of male deity Shiva and female deity Parvati, originated in Kushan culture as far back as the 1st century AD. A statue depicting Ardhanarishvara is included in India's Meenakshi temple. This statue clearly shows both male and female bodily elements. Hippocrates, 460 to circa 370 BC, Greek physician, and Galen, 129 through circa 200 slash 216 AD, a Roman physician, surgeon, and philosopher, both viewed sex as a spectrum between men and women with many shades in between, including hermaphrodites, a perfect balance of male and female. Pliny the Elder, AD 23/24 through 79, a Roman naturalist, described those who are born of both sexes, whom we call hermaphrodites, at one time androgyny, from the Greek andr, or man, and gyn, meaning woman. Augustine, 354 to 430 AD, the influential Catholic theologian, wrote in The Literal Meaning of Genesis that humans were created in two sexes, despite, as happens in some verse, in the case of what we call androgynous. In medieval and early modern European societies, Roman law, post-classical canon law, and later common law referred to a person's sex as male, female, or hermaphrodite, with legal rights as male or female depending on the characteristics that appeared most dominant. The 12th century Decretum Gratiani states, whether an hermaphrodite may witness a testament depends on which sex prevails. The foundation of common law, the 17th century Institutes of the Laws of England, described how a hermaphrodite could inherit either as male or female according to that kind of sex which doth prevail. Legal cases have been described in canon law and elsewhere over the centuries. Some non-European societies have sex or gender systems that recognize more than the two categories of male/man and female/woman. Some of these cultures, for instance, the South Asian Hijra communities, may include intersex people in a third category. Although, according to Morgan Holmes, early Western anthropologists categorized such cultures as primitive, Holmes has argued that analysis of these cultures have been simplistic or romanticized and failed to take account of the ways that subjects of all categories are treated. During the Victorian era, medieval authors introduced the terms true hermaphrodite for an individual who has both ovarian and testicular tissue, male pseudohermaphrodite for a person with testicular tissue but either female or ambiguous sexual anatomy, and female pseudohermaphrodite for a person with ovarian tissue but either male or ambiguous sexual anatomy. Some later shifts in terminology have reflected advances in genetics, while other shifts are suggested to be due to pejorative associations. The term intersexuality was coined by Richard Goldschmidt in 1917. The first suggestion to replace the term hermaphrodite with intersex was made by Pawadius in the 1940s. Since the rise of modern medical science, some intersex people with ambiguous external genitalia have had their genitalia surgically modified to resemble either female or male genitals. Surgeons pinpointed intersex babies as a social emergency when born. In Optimal Gender Policy, initially developed by John Money, stated that early intervention helped avoid gender identity confusion, but this lacks evidence. Early interventions have adverse consequences for psychological and physical health. Since advances in surgery have made it possible for intersex conditions to be concealed, many people are not aware of how frequently intersex conditions arise in human beings or that they occur at all. Dialogue between what were once antagonistic groups of activists and clinicians has led to only slight changes in medical policies and how intersex patients and their families are treated in some locations. In 2011, Christian Bowling became the first intersex person known to have successfully sued for damages in a case brought for non-consensual surgical intervention. In April 2015, Malta became the first country to outlaw non-consensual medical interventions to modify sex anatomy, including that of intersex people. Many civil society organizations and human rights institutions now call for an end to unnecessary normalizing interventions, including the Malta Declaration. Oh, well. Human rights and legal issues. Human rights institutions are placing increasing scrutiny on harmful practices and issues of discrimination against intersex people. These issues have been addressed by a rapidly increasing number of international institutions, including in 2015, the Council of Europe, the United Nations Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, and the World Health Organization, WHO. These developments have been accompanied by international intersex forums and increased cooperation among civil society organizations. However, the implementation, codification, and enforcement of intersex human rights in national legal system remains slow. Physical integrity and bodily autonomy. Stigmatization and discrimination from birth may include infanticide, abandonment, and the stigmatization of families. The birth of an intersex child was often viewed as a curse or a sign of a witch mother, especially in parts of Africa. Abandonments and infanticides have been reported in Uganda, Kenya, South Asia, and China. Infants, children, and adolescents also experience normalizing interventions on intersex persons that are medically unnecessary, and the pathologization of variations in sex characteristics. In countries where the human rights of intersex people have been studied, medical interventions to modify the sex characteristics of intersex people have still taken place without the consent of the intersex person. Interventions have been described by human rights defenders as a violation of many rights, including but not limited to bodily integrity, non-discrimination, privacy, and experimentation. These interventions have frequently been performed with the consent of the intersex person's parents when the person is legally too young to consent. Such interventions have been criticized. Oh, lost my spot. Such interventions have been criticized by the WHO, other UN bodies such as the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and an increasing number of regional and national institutions due to their adverse consequences, including trauma, impact on sexual violation of rights to physical and mental integrity. The UN organizations decided that infant intervention should not be allowed in favor of waiting for the child to mature enough to be a part of the decision making. This allows for a decision to be made with total consent. In April 2015, Malta became the first country to outlaw surgical intervention without consent. In the same year, the Council of Europe became the first institution to state that intersex people have the right not to undergo sex affirmation interventions. Anti-discrimination and equal treatment. People born with intersex bodies are seen as different. Intersex infants, children, adolescents, and adults are often stigmatized and subjected to multiple human rights violations, including discrimination in education, healthcare, employment, sport, and public services. Researchers have documented significant disparities in mental, physical, and sexual health when comparing intersex individuals to the general population, including higher rates of bullying, stigmatization, harassment, violence, and suicidal intention, as well as substantial barriers in the workplace. Several countries have so far explicitly protected intersex people from discrimination, with landmarks including South Africa, Australia, and most comprehensively, Malta. Remedies and claims for compensation. Claims for compensation and remedies for human rights abuses include the 2011 case of Christian Balling in Germany. A second case was adjudicated in Chile in 2012 involving a child and his parents. A further successful case in Germany taken by Michaela Robb was reported in 2015. In the United States, the minor child MC versus Aronson lawsuit was a medical malpractice case related to the informed consent for a surgery performed on the Crawford's adopted child known as MC. At Medical University of South Carolina in April 2006. The case was one of the first lawsuits of its kind to challenge legal, ethical, and medical issues regarding genital normalizing surgery in minors, and was eventually settled out of court by the Medical University of South Carolina for $440,000 in 2017. Information and support. Access to information, medical records, peer and other counseling and support. With the rise of modern medical science in Western societies, a secrecy-based model was also adopted in the belief that this was necessary to ensure normal physical and psychosocial development. Legal recognition. The Asia Pacific Forum of National Human Rights Institutions states that legal recognition is firstly about intersex people who have been issued a male or a female birth certificate being able to enjoy the same legal rights as other men and women. In some regions, obtaining any form of birth certification may be an issue. A Kenyan court case in 2014 established the right of an intersex boy, baby A, to a birth certificate. Like all individuals, some intersex individuals may be raised as a certain sex, male or female, but then identify with another later in life, while most do not. Recognition of third sex or gender classifications occurs in several countries. However, it is controversial when it becomes assumed or coercive, as is the case with some German infants. Sociological research in Australia, a country with a third X sex classification, shows that 19% of people born with atypical sex characteristics selected an X or other option, while 75% of survey respondents self-described as male or female, 52% as women, 23% as men, and 6% as unsure. I'll be sure. Albania, Albert, Einstein. Okay. Intersex conditions can be contrasted with transgender what the heck is genderdy? Transgender gender identities and the attached gender dysphoria a transgender person may feel, wherein their gender identity does not match their assigned sex. However, some people are both intersex and transgender, though intersex people can, by definition, have variable sex characteristics that do not align with either typically male or female. This may be considered separate to an individual's assigned gender, the way they are raised and perceived, and their internal gender identity. A 2012 clinical review paper found that between 8.5% and 20% of people with intersex variations experienced gender dysphoria. In an analysis of the use of pre-implantation genetic diagnosis to eliminate intersex traits, Berman and Revitsky state, parental choice against intersex may conceal biases against same-sex attractiveness and gender nonconformity. The relationship of intersex people and communities to LGBTQ communities is complex, but intersex people are often added to the LGBT acronym, resulting in the acronym LGBTI, or when also including asexual people, LGBTQIA+. Emi Koyama describes how inclusion of intersex in LGBTI can fail to address intersex-specific human rights issues, including creating false impressions that intersex people's rights are protected by laws protecting LGBT people, and failing to acknowledge that many intersex people are not LGBT. This shit confusing as fuck. Organization Intersex International Australia states that some intersex individuals are homosexual and some are heterosexual, but LGBTI activism has fought for the rights of people who fall outside of expected binary sex and gender norms. Julius Kagwa of SIPD, or SIPT, Uganda, has written that while the gay community offers us a place of relative safety, it is also oblivious to our specific needs. Mauro Cabral has written that transgender people and organizations need to stop approaching intersex issues as if they were trans issues, including use of intersex conditions and people as a means of explaining being transgender. We can collaborate a lot with the intersex movement by making it clear how wrong that approach is. In society, fiction, literature, and media. An intersex character is the narrator in Jeffrey Eugenides' Pulitzer Prize-winning novel Middlesex. Middleton, Middlebrook. The memoir Born Both, An Intersex Life, Hatchet Books 2017 by intersex author and activist Haida Deloria received strong praise from the New York Times Book Review, the Washington Post, Rolling Stone, People Magazine, and Psychology Today, was one of School Library Journal's 2017 Top 10 Adult Books for Teens, and was a 2018 Lambda Literary Award nominee. Television works about intersex and films about intersex are scarce. The Spanish language film XXY won the Critics' Week Grand Prize at the 2007 Cannes Film Festival and the ACID CCAS Support Award. Faking It is notable for providing both the first intersex main character in a television show and television's first intersex character played by an intersex actor. Civil society institutions. Intersex peer support and advocacy organizations have existed since at least 1985, with the establishment of the Androgen Insensitivity Syndrome Support Group Australia in 1985. The Androgen Insensitivity Syndrome Support Group UK was established in 1988. The Intersex Society of North America, the ISNA, may have been one of the first intersex civil society organizations to have been open to people regardless of diagnosis. It was active from 1993 to 2008. Events. Intersex Awareness Day is an internationally observed civil awareness day designed to highlight the challenges faced by intersex people, occurring annually on the 26th of October. It marks the first public demonstration by intersex people, which took place in Boston on the 22nd of October in 1996, outside a venue where the American Academy of Pediatrics was holding its annual conference. Intersex Day of Remembrance, also known as Intersex Solidarity Day, is an internationally observed civil awareness day designed to highlight issues faced by intersex people, occurring annually on the 8th of November. It marks the birthday of Herculine Barbin, a French intersex person whose memoirs were later published by Michael Foucault in Herculine Barbin, being the recently discovered memoirs of a 19th century French hermaphrodite. 1 second. Whew, the flag. The intersex flag was created in July 2013 by Morgan Carpenter of Intersex Human Rights Australia to create a flag that is not derivative but is yet firmly grounded in meaning. The circle is described as unbroken and unornamented, symbolizing wholeness and completeness and our potentialities. We are still fighting for bodily autonomy and genital integrity, and this symbolizes the right to be who and how we want to be. Religion. In Judaism, the Talmud contains extensive discussion concerning the status of two types of intersex people in Jewish law, namely the androgynous, who exhibit both male and female external sexual organs, and the tum-tum, who exhibit neither. In the 1970s and 1980s, the treatment of intersex babies started to be discussed in Orthodox Jewish medical halacha by prominent rabbinic leaders such as Eliezer Waldenberg and Moshe Feinstein. Sports. Eric Schneider, Folk Dilemma, Maria Jose Martinez Patino, and Santhi Soundarajan were subject to adverse sex verification testing results in ineligibility to compete in organized competitive competition. Stanislawa Wallace-Seeswick, an athlete diagnosed posthumously with Turner syndrome, was posthumously ruled ineligible to have competed. The South African middle distance runner Caster Semenya won gold at the World Championships in the women's 800 meters and won silver in the 2012 Summer Olympics. When Semenya won gold in the World Championships, the International Association of Athletics Federations, IAAF, requested sex verification tests. The results were not released. Semenya was ruled eligible to compete. Katrina Karkazis, Rebecca Jordan-Young, Georgian Davis, and Sylvia Camporisi have claimed that IAAF policies on hyperandrogenism in female athletes are significantly flawed, arguing that the policy does not protect against breaches of privacy, requires athletes to undergo unnecessary treatment in order to compete, and intensifies gender policing, and recommended that athletes be able to compete in accordance with their legally recognized gender. In April 2014, the BMJ reported that 4 elite women athletes with XY chromosomes and 5A reductase 2 deficiency were subjected to sterilization and partial clitoridectomies in order to compete in sport. The authors noted that partial clitoridectomy was not medically indicated and does not relate to real or perceived athletic advantage. Intersex advocates regarded this intervention as a clearly coercive process. In 2016, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Health, Danius Puris, criticized current and historic sex verification policies, describing how a number of athletes have undergone gonadectomy, removal of reproductive organs, and partial clitoridectomy, a form of female genital mutilation, in the absence of symptoms or health issues warranting those procedures. Biology. The notion of intersex individuals can be understood in the context of sexual system biology that varies across different types of organisms. Most animal species, 95%, including humans, are gonochoric, in which individuals are of either a female or male sex. Hermaphroditic species, some animals and most flowering plants, are represented by individuals that can express both sexes simultaneously or sequentially during their lifetimes. Intersex individuals in a number of gonochoric species who express both female and male phenotypic characters to some degree are known to exist at very low prevalences. Although hermaphrodite and intersex have been used synonymously in humans, a hermaphrodite is specifically an individual capable of producing female and male gametes. While there are reports of individuals that seem to have the potential to produce both types of gamete, in more recent years the term hermaphrodite as applied to humans has fallen out of favor, since female and male reproductive functions have not been observed together in the same individual. Medical. Research in the late 20th century led to a growing medical consensus that diverse intersex bodies are normal but relatively rare forms of human biology. Clinician and researcher Milton Diamond stresses the importance of care in the selection of language related to intersex people. Foremost, we advocate use of the terms typical, usual, or most frequent, where it is more common to use the term normal. When possible, avoid expressions like maldeveloped or undeveloped, errors of development, defective genitals, abnormal, or mistakes of nature. Emphasize that all of these conditions are biologically understandable while they are statistically uncommon. Medical classifications. Sexual differentiation. The common pathway of sexual differentiation, where a productive human female has an XX chromosome pair and a productive male has an XY pair, is relevant to the development of intersex conditions. During fertilization, the sperm adds either an X female or a Y male chromosome to the X in the ovum. This determines the genetic sex of the embryo. During the first weeks of development, genetic male and female fetuses are anatomically indistinguishable, with primitive gonads beginning to develop during approximately the 6th week of gestation. The gonads, in a bipotential state, may develop into either testes, the male gonads, or ovaries, the female gonads, depending on the consequent events. Up until and including the 7th week, the 7th week, 7 days, God's creation. Okay, Genesis. Okay. 7:02 on the clock. 7:03 now. 72, 73, 72nd, 73rd, 74th, 75th Street. Okay. Okay, so up until and including the 7th week, genetically female and genetically male fetuses appear identical. At around 8 weeks of gestation, the gonads of an XY embryo differentiate into functional testes, secreting testosterone. Ovarian differentiation for XX embryos does not occur until approximately week 12 of gestation. In typical female differentiation, the Mullerian duct system develops into the uterus, fallopian tubes, and inner third of the vagina. In males, the Mullerian duct inhibiting hormone AMH causes this duct system to regress. Next, androgens cause the development of the Wolffian duct system, which develops into the vas deferens, seminal vesicles, and ejaculatory ducts. By birth, the typical fetus has become completely sexed, male or female, meaning that the genetic sex XY male or XX female corresponds with the phenotypical sex. That is to say, genetic sex corresponds with internal and external gonads and external appearance of the genitals. 7:04. Signs. There are a variety of symptoms that can occur. Ambiguous genitalia is the most common sign. There can be micropenis, Ronald King Collier, clitoromegaly, partial labial fusion, electrolyte abnormalities, delayed or absent puberty, unexpected changes at puberty, hypospadias, labial or inguinal growing masses, which may turn out to be testes in girls, and undescended testes, which may turn out to be ovaries in boys. Ambiguous genitalia may appear as a large clitoris or a small penis. Good God. Oh no. Mm-mm. Mm. Because there is variation in all of the processes of the development of the sex organs, a child can be born with a sexual anatomy that is typically female or feminine in appearance, with a larger than average clitoris, clitoral hypertrophy, or typically male or masculine in appearance, with a smaller than average penis that is open along the underside. Hmm? The appearance may be quite ambiguous, describable as female genitals, a vulva with a very large clitoris and partially fused labia, or as male genitals with a very small penis, completely open along the midline, hypostatic and empty scrotum. Fertility is variable. Measurement systems for ambiguous genitalia. The orchidometer is a medical instrument to measure the volume of the testicles. It was developed by Swiss pediatric endocrinologist Andrea Prater. The Prater scale and Quigley scale are visual rating systems that measure genital appearance. These measurement systems were satirized in the Philometer, created by the now defunct Intersex Society of North America. Other signs. In order to help in classification, methods other than a genitalia inspection can be performed. For instance, a karyotype display of a tissue sample may determine which of the causes of intersex is prevalent in the case. Additionally, electrolyte tests, endoscopic exam, ultrasound, and hormone stimulation tests can be done. Causes. Intersex can be divided into four categories, which are 46XX intersex, 46XY intersex, true gonadal intersex, and complex or undetermined intersex. 46XX intersex. This condition used to be called female pseudohermaphroditism. Persons with this condition have female internal genitalia and karyotype XX and various degree of external genitalia virilization. External genitalia is masculinized congenitally when female fetus is exposed to excess androgenic environment. Hence, the chromosome of the person is of a woman, the ovaries of a woman, but external genitals that appear like a male. The labia fuse and the clitoris enlarges to appear like a penis. The cause of this can be male hormones taken during pregnancy, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, male hormone producing tumors in the mother, and aromatase deficiency. 46XY intersex. This condition used to be called male pseudohermaphroditism. This is defined as incomplete masculinization of the external genitalia. Thus, the person has male chromosomes, but the external genitals are incompletely formed, ambiguous, or clearly female. This condition is also called 46XY with undervirilization. 46XY intersex has many possible causes, which can be problems with the testes and testosterone formation. Also, there can be problems with using testosterone. Some people lack the enzyme needed to convert testosterone or dehydrotestosterone, which is a cause of 5-alpha reductase deficiency. Androgen insensitivity syndrome is the most common cause of 46XY intersex. True gonadal intersex. This condition used to be called true hermaphroditism. This is defined as having asymmetrical gonads with ovarian and testicular differentiation on either side, separately or combined as ovotestes. In most cases, the cause of this condition is unknown. Complex or underdetermined intersex. This is the condition of having any chromosome configurations rather than 46XX or 46XY intersex. This condition does not result in an imbalance between internal and external genitalia. However, there may be problems with sex hormone levels, overall sexual development, and altered numbers of sex chromosomes. Conditions. There are a variety of opinions on what conditions or traits and are not intersex, dependent on the definition of intersex that is used. Current human rights-based definitions stress a broad diversity of sex characteristics that differ from expectations for male or female bodies. During 2015, the Council of Europe, the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, and Inter-American Commission on Human Rights have called for a review of medical classifications on the basis that they presently impede enjoyment of the right to health. The Council of Europe expressed concern that the gap between the expectations of human rights organizations of intersex people and the development of medical classifications has possibly widened over the past decade. 7-Eleven, imposters. Medical interventions, rationales. Medical interventions take place to address physical health concerns and psychosocial risks. Both types of rationale are the subject of debate, particularly as the consequences of surgical and many hormonal interventions are lifelong and irreversible. Questions regarding physical health include accurately assessing risk levels, necessity, and timing. Psychosocial rationales are particularly susceptible to questions of necessity as they reflect social and cultural concerns. There remains no clinical consensus about an evidence-based surgical timing, necessity, type of surgical intervention, and degree of difference warranting intervention. Such surgeries are the subject of significant contention due to consequences that include trauma, impact on sexual function and sensation, and violation of rights to physical and mental integrity. This includes community activism and multiple reports by international human rights and health institutions and national ethics bodies. In the cases where gonads may pose a cancer risk, as in some cases of androgen insensitivity syndrome, concern has been expressed that treatment rationales and decision-making regarding cancer risk may encapsulate decisions around a desire for surgical normalization. Types. One second. Anyway. It's a little chilly today. It was hell yesterday, 7:14 on the clock. Okay, so types. Feminizing and masculinizing surgeries. Surgical procedures depend on the diagnosis, and there is often a concern as to whether surgery should be performed at all. Typically, surgery is performed shortly after birth. Defenders of the practice argue that individuals must be clearly identified as male or female for them to function socially and develop normally. Psychosocial reasons are often stated. This is criticized by many human rights institutions and authors. Unlike other aesthetic surgical procedures performed on infants, such as corrective surgery for a cleft lip, genital surgery may lead to negative consequences for sexual functioning later in life or feelings of freakishness and unacceptability. Hormone treatment. There is widespread evidence of prenatal testing and hormone treatment to prevent or eliminate intersex traits associated also with the problematization of sexual orientation and gender nonconformity. Psychosocial support. All stakeholders support psychosocial support. A joint international statement by participants at the Third International Intersex Forum in 2013 sought, among other demands, recognition that medicalization and stigmatization of intersex people result in significant trauma and mental health concerns. In view of ensuring the bodily integrity and well-being of intersex people, autonomous, non-pathologizing psychosocial and peer support be available to intersex people throughout their life as self-required, as well as to parents and or care providers. Genetic selection and terminations. The ethics of pre-implantation genetic diagnosis to select against intersex traits was the subject of 11 papers in the October 2013 issue of the American Journal of Bioethics. There is widespread evidence of pregnancy terminations arising from prenatal testing, as well as prenatal hormone treatment to prevent intersex traits. Bourbon and Rabitsky find social concepts of sex, gender, and sexual orientation to be intertwined on many levels. Parental choice against intersex may thus conceal biases against same-sex attractiveness and gender nonconformity. Medical display. Photographs of intersex children's genitalia are circulated in medical communities for documentary purposes, and individuals with intersex traits may be subjected to repeated genital examinations and displayed to medical teams. Problems associated with experiences of medical photography of intersex children have been discussed, along with their ethics, control, and usage. The experience of being photographed has exemplified for many people with intersex conditions the powerlessness and humiliation felt during medical investigations and interventions. Gender dysphoria. The DSM-5 included a change from using gender identity disorder to gender dysphoria. This revised code now specifically includes intersex people who do not identify with their sex assigned at birth and experience clinically significant distress or impairment, using the language of disorders of sex development. Whew, Lord have mercy. What nationality is most likely to be androgynous? Why do so many East Asians have androgynous features, face, etc.? In the eyes of Asians, Westerners are more feminine in appearance than Asians. For example, some Europeans have smaller faces, rounder face, and rounder eyes, and these characteristics are considered feminine. Asians have squarer jaws and not round eyes than Westerners. These physical features are considered masculine, at least in Western aesthetics. In terms of body, regardless of blacks, Western bodies are still considered feminine, at least in the eyes of Asians, because white bodies are more round than Asians. Mm. Hmm. Let me go to the bathroom. Be right back. All right, and we're back. And now we are going to read about androgyny, and I'm going to leave it at that. So, androgyny is the possession of both masculine and female characteristics. Androgyny may be expressed with regard to biological sex, gender identity, or gender expression. When androgyny refers to mixed biological sex characteristics in humans, it often refers to conditions in which characteristics of both sexes are clearly expressed in a single individual, with fully developed sexual organs of both sexes, also called hermaphrodites. It also refers to intersex people who are born with congenital variations that complicate assigning their sex at birth, but do not have fully developed sexual organs of both sexes. Regarding gender identity, androgynous individuals may identify as transgender or non-binary and use this as a form of gender expression in which androgyny has fluctuated in popularity in different cultures and throughout history. Physically, an androgynous appearance may be achieved through personal grooming, fashion, or hormone treatment, and may not present as distinctly male or female. You know, and I think now when I'm seeing hormone, I'm seeing the whore of Babylon. Horites. Etymology. The term derives from ancient Greek from avnp, stem avop, aner, andro, meaning man, and goon or guni, gyne, meaning woman, through the Latin androgynous. History. Androgyny is attested from earliest history and across world cultures. In ancient Sumer, androgynous and intersex men were heavily involved in the cult of Inanna. A set of priests known as Gala worked in Inanna's temples where they performed elegies and lamentations. Gala took female names, spoke in the Emisal dialect, which was traditionally reserved for women, and appeared to have engaged in sexual acts with men. In later Mesopotamian cultures, Kurgaru and Asanu were servants of the goddess Ishtar, Inanna's East Semitic equivalent, who dressed in female clothing and performed war dances in Ishtar's temples. Several Akkadian proverbs seem to suggest that they may have also engaged in sexual activity with men. Gwendolyn Lake, an anthropologist known for her writings on Mesopotamia, has compared these individuals to the contemporary Indian Hijra. In one Akkadian hymn, Ishtar is described as transforming men into women. The 2nd century CE Mishnah, a foundational text of rabbinic Judaism, mentions the term androgynous 32 times. In one mention, Rabbi Meyer describes the androgynos as a creation of its own type, which the sages could not decide whether it is male or female. The ancient Greek myth of Hermaphroditus and Salmacis, two divinities who fused into a single immortal, provided a frame of reference used in Western culture for centuries. Androgyny and homosexuality are also seen in Plato's Symposium in a myth where humanity started as 3 sexes: male people that descended from the sun, female people who descended from earth, and male people who came from the moon. This is one of the earlier written references to androgyny and the only case in classical Greek text that female homosexuality or lesbianism is ever mentioned. Philosophers such as Philo of Alexandria and early Christian leaders such as Origen and Gregory of Nyssa continued to promote the idea of androgyny as humans' original and perfect state during late antiquity. In medieval Europe, the concept of androgyny played an important role in both Christian theological debate and alchemical theory. Influential theologians such as John of Damascus and John Scotus Erigena continued to promote the pre-fall androgyny proposed by the early church fathers, while other clergy expounded and debated the proper view and treatment of contemporary hermaphrodites. Seems to me as the hermaphrodites would have been post-fall androgyny. Modern history, Western esotericism's embrace of androgyny continued into the modern period. A 1550 anthology of alchemical thought, De Alchemia, included the influential Rosary of the Philosophers, which depicts the sacred marriage of the masculine principle, Sol, with the feminine principle, Luna, producing the divine androgen, a representation of alchemical hermetic beliefs in dualism, transformation, and the transcendental perfection of the union of opposites. The symbolism and meaning of androgyny was a central preoccupation of the German mystic Jacob Boehme and the Swedish philosopher Emanuel Swedenborg. The philosophical concept of the universal androgen or universal hermaphrodite, a perfect merging of the sexes that predated the current corrupted world and or was the utopia of the next. Didn't I say there will be no utopia? Also important in some strains of Rosicrucianism. There you go, Mr. Marcus Vereen. And in philosophical traditions such as Swedenborgianism and Theosophy. 20th century architect Claude Fayette Bragdon expressed the concept mathematically as a magic square, using it as building block in many of his most noted buildings. Now I'm thinking about that strong jaw of, who is that? Malcolm X's daughter? Lord have mercy. Somebody stop me. In the mid-18th century, the macaronis of Georgian-era England were a wealthy subculture of young men known for androgynous gender expression. Their unusually large wigs, lavish fashion, and sentimental behavior prompted backlash from conservative generations of the time. In 1770, the Oxford Dictionary declared there is indeed a kind of animal, neither male nor female, a thing of the neuter gender, lately started up among us. It is called a macaroni. An example is portrait artist Richard Causeway, referred to as the macaroni artist. Psychological. In psychological study, various measures have been used to characterize gender, such as the BIM sex role inventory and the personal attributes questionnaire. Masculine traits are categorized as agentic and instrumental, dealing with assertiveness and analytical skill. Feminine traits are categorized as communal and expressive, dealing with empathy and subjectivity. Androgynous individuals exhibit behavior that extends beyond what is normally associated with their given sex. Due to the possession of both masculine and feminine characteristics, androgynous individuals have access to a wider array of psychological competencies in regards to emotional regulation, communication styles, and situational adaptability. Androgynous individuals have also been associated with higher levels of creativity and mental health. 144. BIM sex role inventory, BSRY, was constructed by the early leading proponents of androgyny, Sandra Bim, 1977. The BSRI is one of the most widely used gender measures. Based on an individual's responses to the items in the BSRI, they are classified as having one of four gender role orientations. masculine, feminine, androgynous, or undifferentiated, yeah. Bim understood that both masculine and feminine characteristics could be expressed by anyone, and it would determine those gender role orientations. Oof. An androgynous person is an individual who has a high degree of both feminine expressive and masculine instrumental traits. A feminine individual is ranked high on feminine expressive traits and ranked low on masculine instrumental traits. A masculine individual is ranked high on instrumental traits and ranked low on expressive traits. An undifferentiated person is low on both feminine and masculine traits. According to Sandra Bim, androgynous individuals are more flexible and more mentally healthy than either masculine or feminine individuals. So you see how they mix up the lies with the truth, okay? Because we all have an aspect of masculine and feminine because we have mothers and fathers, okay? Not because we have both sexes. According to Sandra Bim, androgynous individuals are more flexible and more mentally healthy than either masculine or feminine individuals. Undifferentiated individuals are less competent. More recent research has debunked this idea, at least to some extent, and Bim herself has found weaknesses in her original pioneering work. Now she prefers to work with gender schema theory. One study found that masculine and androgynous individuals had higher expectations for being able to control the outcomes of their academic efforts than feminine or undifferentiated individuals. Personal Attributes Questionnaire, the PAQ, was developed in the 70s by Janet Spence, Robert Helmrich, and Joy Stapp. This test asked subjects to complete a survey consisting of 3 sets of scales relating to masculinity, femininity, and masculinity-femininity. These scales had sets of adjectives commonly associated with males, females, and both. These descriptors were chosen based on typical characteristics as rated by a population of undergrad students. Similar to the BSRI, the PAC labeled androgynous individuals as people who ranked highly in both the areas of masculinity and femininity. However, Spence and Helmreich considered androgyny to be a descriptor of high levels of masculinity and femininity as opposed to a category in and of itself. Biological sex. Historically, the word androgynous was applied to humans with a mixture of male and female sex characteristics and was sometimes used synonymously with the term hermaphrodite. In some disciplines, such as botany, androgynous and hermaphroditic are still used interchangeably. When androgyny is used to refer to physical traits, it often refers to a person whose biological sex is difficult to discern at a glance because of their mixture of male and female characteristics. In modern English, the word intersex is used to more precisely describe individuals with mixed or ambiguous sex characteristics. However, both intersex and non-intersex people can exhibit a mixture of male and female sex traits, such as hormone levels, type of internal and external genitalia, and the appearance of secondary sex characteristics. Gender identity. An individual's gender identity, a personal sense of one's own gender, may be described as androgynous if they feel that they have both masculine and feminine aspects. The word androgyny can refer to a person who does not fit neatly into one of the typical masculine or feminine gender roles of their society, or to a person whose gender is a mixture of male and female, not necessarily half and half. Many androgynous individuals identify as being mentally or emotionally both masculine and feminine. They may also identify as gender neutral. genderqueer, or non-binary. A person who is androgynous may engage freely in what is seen as masculine or feminine behaviors as well as tasks. They may have a balanced identity that includes the virtues of both men and women and may disassociate the task with what gender they may be socially or physically assigned to. People who identify as androgynous typically disregard which traits are culturally constructed specifically for males and females within a society, and rather focus on what behavior is most effective within the situational circumstance. Some non Western cultures recognize additional androgynous gender identities called third genders. Gender expression that includes a mixture of masculine and feminine characteristics can be described as androgynous. The categories of masculine and feminine in gender expression are socially constructed. One second. The devil is a lie. Anyway, so the categories of masculine and feminine gender expression are socially constructed and rely on shared conceptions of clothing, behavior, communication style, and other aspects of presentation. In some cultures, androgynous gender expression has been celebrated, while in others, androgynous expression has been limited or suppressed. To say that a culture or relationship is androgynous is to say that it lacks rigid gender roles or has blurred lines between gender roles. Whose song is that? Blurred lines. TV6, TV, is that him? Blurred lines. Yeah, I can't remember his name. Okay. The word genderqueer is often used by androgynous individuals to refer to themselves, but the terms genderqueer and androgynous are neither equivalent nor interchangeable. Genderqueer, by virtue of its ties with queer culture, carries socio-political connotations that androgyny does not carry. For the association with homosexuality, some androgynies may find the label genderqueer inaccurate, inapplicable, or offensive. Androgyny is considered by some to be a viable alternative to androgen for differentiating internal psychological factors from external visual factors. An alternative to androgyny is gender role transcendence. The view individual competence should be conceptualized on a personal basis rather than on the basis of masculinity, femininity, or androgyny. In agenderism, the division of people into women and men in the physical sense is considered erroneous and artificial. Agendered individuals are those who reject gender labeling in conception of self-identity and other matters. They see their subjectivity through the term person instead of woman or man. According to E.O. Wright, genderless people can have traits, behaviors, and dispositions that correspond to what is currently viewed as feminine and masculine, and the mix of these would vary across persons. Nevertheless, it does not suggest that everyone would be androgynous in their identities and practices in the absence of gendered relations. What disappears in the idea of genderlessness is any expectation that some characteristics and dispositions are strictly attributed to a person of any biological sex. Contemporary trends. Throughout most of 20th century Western history, social rules have restricted people's dress according to gender. Trousers were traditionally a male form of dress frowned upon for women. However, during the 19th century, female spies were introduced and vivandières wore a certain uniform with a dress over trousers. Women activists during that time would also decide to wear trousers. For example, Luisa Capetillo, a women's rights activist and the first woman in Puerto Rico to wear trousers in public. In the 20th century, starting around World War I, traditional gender roles blurred, and fashion pioneers such as Paul Poiret and Coco Chanel introduced trousers to women's fashion. The flapper style for women of this era included trousers and a chic bob, which gave women an androgynous look. Coco Chanel, who had a love for wearing trousers herself, created trouser designs for women such as beach pajamas and horse riding attire. During the 1930s, glamorous actresses such as Marlene Dietrich fascinated and shocked many with their strong desire to wear trousers and adopt the androgynous style. Dietrich is remembered as one of the first actresses to wear trousers in a premiere. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, the women's liberation movement is likely to have contributed to ideas and influenced fashion designers such as Yves Saint Laurent. Yves Saint Laurent designed the Le smoking suit and introduced in 1966. There's that 66. While Helmut Newton's eroticized androgynous photographs of the suit made it iconic and a classic. Elvis Presley introduced an androgynous style in rock and roll. His pretty face and use of eye makeup often made people think he was a rather effeminate guy, which he was. The devil. So, when the Rolling Stones played London's Hyde Park in 1969, Mick Jagger wore a white man's dress designed by Michael Fish. Fish was the most fashionable shirt maker in London, the inventor of the Kipper tie, and a principal tastemaker of the Peacock Revolution in men's fashion. His creation for Mick Jagger was considered to be the epitome of the swinging 60s. In 1972, David Bowie presented his alter ego, Ziggy Stardust, a character that was a symbol of sexual ambiguity when he launched the album The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars. Mark Bolan, the other pioneer of glam rock, performed on the BBC's Top of the Pops in 1971, wearing glitter and satins, with The Independent stating his appearance permitted a generation of teeny boppers to begin playing with the idea of androgyny. The 1973 West End musical, The Rocky Horror Show, also depicted sexual fluidity. Continuing into the 1980s, the rise of avant-garde fashion designers like Yohji Yamamoto challenged the social constructs around gender. They reinvigorated androgyny in fashion, addressing gender issues. This was also reflected within pop culture icons during the 1980s, such as Grace Jones, Prince, Annie Lennox, and Boy George. Power dressing for women became even more prominent within the 1980s, which was previously only something done by men in order to look structured and powerful. However, during the 1980s, this began to take a turn as women were entering jobs with equal roles to the men. In the article, The Menswear Phenomenon by Kathleen Beckett, written by Vogue in 1984, the concept of power dressing is explored. As women entered these jobs, they had no choice but to tailor their wardrobes accordingly, eventually leading the ascension of power dressing as a popular style for women. Women began to find through fashion they can incite men to pay more attention to the seduction of their mental prowess rather than the physical attraction of their appearance. This influence in the fashion world quickly makes its way to the world of film, with dressing women as their main subject matter. Japanese designers began popularizing androgynous fashion in the 1980s, as seen in the work of Yohji Yamamoto and Rei Kawakubo, who brought in a distinct Japanese style that adopted distinctively gender-ambiguous themes. These two designers consider themselves a part of the avant-garde reinvigorating Japanism. Yamamoto has expressed the lack of necessity behind gender distinctions, stating, "I always wonder who decided that there should be a difference in the clothes of men and women." Also during the 1980s, Grace Jones, a singer and fashion model, gender-thwarted appearance in the 1980s, which startled the public. Her androgynous style inspired many, and she became an androgynous style icon for modern celebrities. Androgyny has been gaining more prominence in popular culture in the early 21st century. Both the fashion industry and pop culture have accepted and even popularized the androgynous look, with several current celebrities being hailed as creative trendsetters. The rise of metrosexual in the first decade of the 2000s has also been described as a related phenomenon associated with this trend. Traditional gender stereotypes have been challenged and changed since the 1960s, which include the hippie movement and flower power. Artists in films such as Leonardo DiCaprio supported the skinny look in the 1990s, a departure from traditional masculinity. They just making all kind of fucking noise for no reason. Get the fuck out of here. Which resulted in the fad Leomania. Musical stars such as Kurt Cobain of Nirvana, Andre 3000, and the band Placebo have used clothing and makeup to popularize androgynous and genderqueer aesthetics throughout the 1990s and the first decade of the 2000s. While the 1990s unrolled and fashion developed an affinity for unisex clothes, there was a rise of designers who favored that look, including Helmut Lang, Giorgio Armani, and Pierre Cardin. Men in catalogs started wearing jewelry, makeup, visual kei, and designer stubble. These styles have become a significant mainstream trend of the 21st century, both in the Western world and in Asia. Japanese and Korean cultures have featured the androgynous look as a positive attribute in society, as depicted in both K-pop, J-pop, and in anime and manga, as well as the fashion industry. Symbols and iconography. In the ancient and medieval worlds, androgynous people and or hermaphrodites were represented in art by the caduceus, a wand of transformative power in the ancient Greco-Roman mythology. The caduceus was created by Tiresias and represents his transformation into a woman by Juno in punishment for striking at mating snakes. The caduceus was later carried by Hermes slash Mercury and was the basis for the astronomical symbol for the planet Mercury and the botanical sign for hermaphrodite. That sign is now sometimes used for transgender people. Another common androgyny icon is the medieval and early modern period was the rebus, a conjoined male and female figure, often with solar and lunar motifs. Still another symbol was what is called sun cross, which united the cross or saltire symbol for male with the circle for female. This sign is now the astronomical symbol for the planet Earth. Oh, really? All right, we're going to end it there at the 2:05. Y'all already know what's up. We'll talk about the Ashira poles and the electricity organs, as well as the baphomet of Calumet, the hermaphrodite of North America, the minotaur and petrified bodies, as well as astral projection. We just gonna go all in. We going to work. Okay, so thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I love you all. Peace.